I'm John Hink. I'm a product manager at Veritas, and we've got a little presentation here. We're going to talk a little bit about ransomware and ransomware resiliency. I do, however, want to try and keep this as open as possible. I am totally fine with taking questions at any point in time. Anything you want to ask, right? Conversationally is really good. And I might actually answer you a few questions myself as well. So to get started, though, let's just kind of break the ice on this stuff a little bit, right? So ransomware resiliency, who here thinks it doesn't matter? Raise your hand. Okay, is it important to you guys? Everyone, people, right? Everyone? It's a big deal, right? I think this is like one of the more culturally significant things I've seen happen in this industry in a really long time. The fact that everyone all the way up to the CIO, CTO, CEO is freaking out about it and they want to talk about it, right? So it's really good to be able to have answers, have good things you want to say about this. So these are common things that we hear from customers. So these are the things that we hear them, their concerns, these are the things that they want to worry about, right? Some of this is on the idea of protection. If you think about like how we do this is you have to protect things and verify that they're going to be safe. So like, for example, like we do backups, right? We take backups. So what do we have to do, right? We need to move these things into safe, secure locations, right? So in this protection, right, we want to focus on making sure that we don't have these things in old architectures. We have things moved into modern workloads. And the whole unified solution is a really big thing. If you got to do a DR drill or you got to get recovery going and you got 15 different products to figure out at the same time while you're doing it, that's a big pain in the butt, right? No one wants to deal with that. So think about from detection, this is the idea that, okay, yeah, so protecting your data is really good, but what if something's going wrong with it? What if you don't know what's up with it, right? There's all sorts of things that can be going crazy there, and you need to be on top of that. So that's where we focus on this idea of, is there ransomware lying around in your backups? Is there something we're not picking up on, right? And then what about, if you, like I said, this diverse backup solution thing can be a big problem, right? If I got to recover VMs with one thing and databases is another thing, and the CEO wants to know if my not done 10 minutes ago, that's a big pain in the butt to worry about. And going on to that, right, the idea of recovery, right? It doesn't matter really how well you protect things, how well you can detect if there's things wrong. If you're like, oh, we got to restore a bunch of stuff, how long is it going to take? Well, about a week, right? No, we need recovery to happen in hours and minutes, right? At scale. You need to be able to push a button, get this stuff up and running, because every second you're losing money. That's why this stuff is really important. So one of the things we did when we thought about this, right, is we looked at the NIST standards, right? So there's identify, protect, detect, respond, recover, right? And a lot of what we've done in our products is done on the protect, detect, recover, and then we've extended this in some of our other products to the identify and respond areas. This is a really good way. Like a few years ago, we started seeing it with trends and ransomware. We started thinking about this. We're like, what do we really need to think about here, right? And who else has anyone seen the NIST stuff before? Do you get asked about this at work, right? And so it's a really good way to align things, to think about how you want to do it. So a couple years ago, we started thinking really hard about that and how can we align with what we do with that. And a lot of what we did is we focused on the idea that when we talk about protection, this is safeguarding data integrity, right? This is, for example, you give us backups, right? We have net backup, we do backups with them. Those backups come onto the system. Cool. Does that mean somebody can delete them anytime they want, right? Is that a problem, right? Every ransomware, right, one of the first things it tries to do is get to the system, is get a hold of your backups, get onto the system, steal your AD credentials if it can, get in there, delete all your backups because they know that's their biggest weakness, right? So with our products, right, we've got hardened systems, appliances that are the best way to the most secure solution for a backup solution. Not only do they not need Windows at all anywhere, right? Not only are they working on a special version of Linux, but they've got SE Linux, they've got critical system execution prevention, they've got a multi-layered defense in depth strategy that gives them a very hardened profile, right? So I like to talk about them because our appliances, are in use all over the place, in medical systems, in government systems. They're heavily used. They're heavily targeted by things like this, and not once, have they been impacted by these. So they're pretty solid. Now, this idea of, what else can you do on top of that, right? Because nobody can hack into the thing, right? That's cool, right? But what if you got an employee who's a little disgruntled, right? Or who wants to take a couple $1 million from a ransomware vendor, that's a thing, right? So how do you do that? That's where we have the immutable solutions that come in there. Not only do we have immutable down at the block level on the device, on the storage, you write a dedupe target, it's immutable, and it will stay that way, and it will retain for the retention period you want. And there's nothing anyone can do with that, even if they have the right credentials. Not only can we do it on-prem, we can also take that dedupe stuff, we can store it in AWS and S3 Object Lock at a granular level. This means not like everything that goes into that bucket has to be kept for 5 years. Everything that goes in that bucket has a unique retention level that's set for that object. And that object, it's granular. It gives you that idea that I can simplify things a lot. And that's a really important thing too, right? Because we don't want complexity, right? So if I can take all my data, I can write it to a dedupe storage target. I can put it in S3 and I can make it immutable. It's awesome if I don't have to sit there and say, well, these ones have to be for this time, so they go to that bucket. These ones have to be for that time, right? So having that granularity is really important. So those are really strong stances on how you protect things, right? These are the idea that you have zero trust, right? You have impenetrable systems. You have immutable storage, both on-prem and the cloud, so you can have a local copy and a remote copy, both immutable. There's no requirement for which tier it's in. It can be your first copy or your 10th copy. They can all be immutable. Those are the really important things that make sure that if your environment gets hit by ransomware, this is going to be the last thing standing. It's going to be like that house that had the better sprinkler system in the wildfires, right? And it will be sitting there, and you could turn around and start doing recoveries, right? These are our customers. Not through any fault of our own, but we've had customers get hit by ransomware. We've seen this happen to people, right? And they've had very good success. We're talking, get up in a few hours sort of thing, right? It's really important, though, to have that protection level, but that's just not it, right? So the identify thing is where this comes in. So the idea that to identify that, am I seeing what's going on, right? And this is a lot of things that we can do with Veritas. We can come in and tell you, is there maybe somebody in your systems, on your production systems that's doing something a little weird? You got a user suddenly encrypting a lot of things? So that's not right, right? So we can pick up on that. We can pick up on those things, and we can identify those users. You can create policies to shut down those accounts, notify people about it, and make sure that that doesn't happen, right? Similar to the identify stuff, right, is really detect, which is even deeper monitoring. And we do that in a couple different layers, right? So when we talk about detection, this is the idea that, I was talking about backups, right? We're bringing in backups. That's a ton of data. We're bringing this data in. We're pulling it in at all sorts of formats, right? Well, one of the big things we do is we start analyzing that data. We've got all this metadata right there, right? We don't have to go back and look. We don't have to crack something out later and send it somewhere else and try and see if we can figure out something out. We pull all that data right away as part of that process, and we can run analytics against that. So we use a machine learning AI. We actually will go through and analyze that data, and we start predicting, basically coming up with predictable outcomes. Essentially using a cluster ML, the idea that you can come in here and say, hey, these values are always like this, right? My entropy is like this. My dedupe rate's always 90 to 95% for this data set, right? Okay, cool, that's cool. But all of a sudden it's 30%. Well, then that's anomalous, right? So we have that ability to give you kind of near real-time feedback pretty quickly after the backup completes. So we'll come back and tell you, was there anything weird about that backup? I mean, I think it's practically something that you would be doing if you're sitting there watching everything, right? But who has time to do that? That's where the whole AI ML thing comes in there. On top of that, the idea is that even deeper dive technologies. How do I look into the backup contents, right? How do I make sure I'm not going to restore something that has malware on it, right? All that visibility are things we bring under the detect operations. Those operations, and these, like I said, these are just built into the product, right? You don't have to send it somewhere else. You don't need to make a secondary copy to do anything. I don't have to reuse the secondary analytics system to do it. We can do it right inside the product. And these are really important, streamlined ways to get you that resiliency and that detection pillar so that if you're doing restores, if you're doing recovery, if you're looking at what's going on with your backups, you're comfortable and you know that that's safe and secure. Now with Respond, these are things where we're looking at like how do we hook into things like CloudWatch and stuff like that. And I'm going to have Henry talk a little bit about that later. But these ideas like how can I take something if I see an event, right? Does it have to depend on you to tell it something, or does it take that event and run with it? Does it bring it to another system? Does it report it? Does automated actions happen as a result of that, right? Those are important Respond things. And then finally with recovery, like I talked about, recovery is not just like, can I click, do a restore, right? But how do I restore hundreds of machines at once? How do I restore business units? How do I recover, not just the system that I need to use or the disk? I could replicate a disk, right? That's fine, but is that going to make my business run? Is a replicated, that's not going to make your business run, right? You need the network to be online. You need to have the databases come up before the web services that you use those databases are running, right? You need all that stuff to happen. That's a lot of complexity. And one of the things we do is we turn that into a push button operation. So you can go in there and say, click, 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 let's do it, right? So some of those things I talked about earlier, right, and get into a little more depth, is the immutability, right? And I said at this level is the appliances, that structure, right, that third-party hardware and cloud infrastructure that we can use, all those different things we can present to you, give you that, immutable structure that helps you save things. The visibility is we're complete, right? We're looking at things from all over the place. Data we're bringing through backups, data we're bringing in from other analytics tools we have in our platforms, and our insights and visibility we give into your infrastructure to help you make recommendations. And then finally, and I'll talk about this in more detail later, is the idea of how this cloud recovery works, right? How can I leverage not only live data and production data, but also my deduplication infrastructure, my data I have stored in cloud infrastructure to help myself do resiliency recovery, not just like from on-prem to cloud, but cloud to cloud, region to region, right? These are all things you have to worry about, right? If I have stuff running in one region, how do I make sure I can move it to another region if I need to? And so this is kind of a diagram. This is a good diagram. There's one after this one, but I think this one's a little bit better. And you can see like some of this talks about like basically how can I handle the migration stuff, right? So when you see things on here like the net backup domain, you see the MSDPC, that is a deduplication cloud tier, right? Our MSDPC is our dedupe engine. It's a purely software-defined deduplication engine. It's an object engine in of itself, which makes it really easy for it to send stuff into object storage. It's really important, though, that it is that. That's an important fact. Like this deduplication engine does not depend on block-level file system technologies, right? It might sit on top of a file system. It can store its data, but it can store its data in any object layer. So it can put it on a file system. It can put it in object storage. It makes it very portable, and it makes it really cost-effective when you look at the other side if I want to run this stuff in the cloud, right? So if I can protect multiple petabytes of data with just a single instance and a terabyte or so of space on block for restore overhead, that helps drive costs down. That's why these things are really, really important. Being able to scale that out, right? Be able to have automated deployment from marketplaces or from CFTs that you want to use. All that stuff is there and ready for use for that automation. A couple things that, we have Henry here from Amazon, Henry Axelrod. If you want to come up, Henry, there's a few things that we talk about from Amazon's side that helps us really help speed things up with like the direct connect and the private link and how that works. You want to talk about it?
Yeah, sure. Happy to talk about that, John. So how many, just a quick show of hands, how many people are familiar with VPC endpoints for S3? Yeah, okay, good amount of people. For those who aren't, VPC endpoints is something we had for a while for S3, where essentially you can create a private endpoint in your virtual private cloud or your VPC, where you can connect to S3 without having to go over the public endpoint. So that only worked when you were accessing it from resources within your VPC. So if you spin up an EC2 instance or Lambda or something else, you can access it. So last year we introduced the concept of private link for S3. And what this basically enables you to do is now from your on-premises location, so if you're connecting from Direct Connect or VPN, now you can also access S3 through a private endpoint. So you get end-to-end, private IP space, so you don't have to worry about public endpoints if you have firewall policies, anything like that. You get a endpoint directly on your VPC with the IP range that you configure, and you can access that from your on-premises location or from anywhere that you have connectivity to that location. So it creates a nice extra layer of security and compliance for those, especially in the finance industry. This is something that was highly requested. A few other things. Already John talked about S3 object lock. So just to double click on it a little, this is something that we introduced that adds immutability to the objects that you're storing in your S3 bucket. And it works across all storage classes. So you can have things in S3 Standard, you can have things in Glacier, you can have things in Glacier Deep Archive. S3 Object Lock works in all of those. And it works on the granular object level. So what does that mean? So that means that partners like Veritas are able to take advantage of that and set specific retention policies for each and every object differently. So if you have a lot of data going in there, different backups, different backup policies, you don't have to worry about managing 15, 20, 50 buckets and having all different policies. You can have each individual object expire when you need it to. And until that time, it's immutable. You can't delete it. You can't modify it. We actually have two types of policies when it comes to S3 object lock. We have a governance mode, which is a mode that you can enable the lock, and essentially you need an extra set of permissions to be able to modify that lock. You can change it in governance mode. So for those who don't need strict compliance and strict immutability, but just want an extra layer of security, you can use governance mode. In compliance mode, once that lock is set to a specific date, nobody, not even the root account, not even AWS, could delete or modify that object. It is locked, so you don't have to worry about ransomware or someone accidentally deleting that object or anything like that. It is locked until that date. And it has been shown to be SEC 17A4 compliant, which is a very high level of compliance for anyone who's familiar with it. So that gets you to that. Then also you have, aspects, as John was mentioning, like CloudFormation templates that let you deploy a lot of this as infrastructure as code, right? So you can keep that aspect of a protection. So Veritas is protecting a lot of the EC2 instances, a lot of the databases, a lot of things that you got going on in their environment. And you can also be able to easily deploy your net backup environment with CFTs. You can deploy any of your applications with CFTs and make sure that you get a very consistent configuration. As well as I mentioned with S3, you get all those storage classes, which NetBackup supports all the storage classes that we have. Currently, we have 6 different storage classes within region, everywhere from S3 standard, which is the highest, most active storage class, all the way down to Glacier Deep Archive, where you can actually store data for as low as $1 a terabyte a month, which, as you can imagine, is pretty low, even in comparison to offline tape. So I think that gives everyone kind of a good idea of some of the key services that we're talking about here.
So who here gets bugged about, because you talked about the dedupe to S3 object lock. Who here gets bugged about like how much they spend in the cloud, right? Or does no one care? Is it just fine? Spend whatever you want?
Everyone's spend is good.
Yeah, use all the data. One of the things we do, I do like to talk about is that deduplication technology, which I know dedupe's kind of just a commodity thing, right? But we've actually really taken our technology and we've continued to develop on it, and we've really focused on that. And so one of the things that I'm really proud about is the fact that we can keep these costs down really low, right? If you look at, I think it was who Peter did a thing last year at reInvent where he was talking about moving your data to the cloud, and he had this chart, right, where it's like, it's a bar chart. So here's 100% of your on-prem costs, and then you get rid of your stuff and stuff like that, and it goes down and down, by it's like 50% now. And then you add in your gets and puts into some other things, right? And then it goes up a little bit. So you move to the cloud, you get like a 45% savings, right, if you do that, right? But that big 50% chunk, that was storage, right? So one of the things we focus on is how do we help you manage your storage costs, right? How do we make this data available? Even if you want to have like an active archive sort of thing, like where it's not just an archive where I dump data, but I'm going to dump it there, but I want to be able to kind of manipulate it. I want to use it for analytics, that sort of stuff. We reduce that significantly. We can make it immutable. We drive down those costs. When we're talking about things like using Direct Connect and Private Link, right? We can take all that stuff and dedupe it at the source and then move it onto AWS, right? It helps you manage your costs. It helps you keep things moving smoothly. A good example too is we have a customer right now that has a lot of endpoints, 800 I think. So they have 800 endpoints with just thin clients on them that do source-side deduplication, compression, and encryption, and send all that data into the cloud, writing to 800 source instances, writing to 6 instances in the cloud, distributing that stuff into a deduplicated object storage. And so, that sort of streamlined and that sort of cost savings is really important. I mean, I know, we're kind of.
And I mean, just think about the cost savings from 2 aspects when you talk about deduplication. Not only are you saving costs on the actual storage, but you're also saving costs on the network bandwidth. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I talked to a lot of customers, and customers have sometimes constrained, bandwidth. Even if you get a direct connect, maybe going to that facility where you have the direct connect, you have a MPLS or some other connection that it costs you, a decent amount of money, or maybe you don't have available bandwidth, currently with that. So you can imagine going dedupe. If you get, 90% savings on dedupe, that's 90% less data that you're sending across that wire. Maybe that could be the difference between you needing a 10 gig connection versus a 1 gig connection, which is going to totally change your costs and save you a lot of money. So you're saving money on the front end with lower amount of bandwidth, also saving time, right, in transfer time, and you're saving that storage cost. So all the storage costs, even the lowest storage costs like Glacier Deep Archive, which as I was talking about, and I mentioned at the even low price of $1 terabyte, $1 per terabyte per month. Imagine now you add deduplication on top of that, right? So now you're talking much less than that. So it really becomes a truly affordable way to back up and store your data.
And like I said, is you can address a significant amount of back-end data that's all dedupe compressed, with a reasonably sized single instance with just a terabyte or two of storage, depending on how fast you want to have some buffers and caches work, right? So it's I'm not going to get too technical, but it's basically the point is it's real kind of driving towards a lower cost way to have storage efficiency in the cloud. So we talk, one of the things we talked about too, right, is that it's, we're kind of talking about components, right? But this idea to get into like, what's the overall solution, right? How do I really cover everything, right? So this is where we say, from that protect side we talked about, right, is, okay, the newest version of NetBackup is 9.1, right? It is going to give you some of the best-in-class storage technologies, automation, coverage for whatever workload you can think of, right? Everything from, VMware, to databases like Oracle, MS SQL, stuff like that, to Kubernetes, and even OpenStack, right? So it's, your large workload coverage, all the ones you can think of pretty much. And that support for the Amazon S3 object lock is significant. And essentially all these different ways that you can move that data to make sure you're protected, and you're taking, like if you got stuff running in the cloud, you can protect it with this infrastructure as instances that you spawn right out of the CFTs. You got stuff on-prem, you can do it from there. You got a mix of it, right? You got, across region, across platform, we can work all those things. You don't even have to have separate domains. They can span across these regions and stuff like that. It just helps you get a simplified way to come in here, deliver protection without a bunch of headaches, without a bunch of vendors, and it really streamlines things. In the detection side, we have, NetBackup we have a product called AppTower, right, which does not only looking at NetBackup and getting insights and analytics into that, but also it can expand, and you can expand that to look into your overall infrastructure. And this is something that, like, when you sit down and you show this to your environment, this will discover on-prem where you have cost, challenges, where you might have some ransomware things to worry about. It's got recommendations. It'll look at everything, both on-prem and in the cloud. The data insight I mentioned earlier, right, is that's the thing that's going to look for suspicious user activity, right? That's going to look for what's going on with my data, somebody doing something goofy with it. How do I identify that, flag accounts, shut those things down? And then, there's Guard Duty and CloudWatch, right? What do you want to say about Guard Duty and CloudWatch?
Yeah, well, I think when it comes to anything with detection, being able to do that on AWS is a wide variety of services. Here's a couple that are listed, like, Guard Duty that provides some security logs that are integrate with some of our security partners to help detect things that happen to your environment. Because remember, when it comes to ransomware, you got two aspects of it. We're talking like heavily about obviously the different aspects that you could bring with backup, with recovery, identification, detection. But security also comes in as a key piece to that as well, right? You need to make sure that you're able to audit security events and security logs. And so these services like Guard Duty, which specializes in security, and CloudWatch, which is able to provide you not only metrics, but also all your logging in a centralized location across all your services, all your applications, all your instances. So you have one place to search where you're not dependent on going and grabbing a log from an EC2 instance or anything of that nature. You're able to search your logs. You're able to create alarms based on your logs. So you can quickly get any information about any anomalous activity, any attempted intrusion in your environment to your security team so they can get the information and act on that information potentially before an event or of any type of ransomware should happen, or maybe early enough on where you only have to restore a small portion of your environment versus it's spreading and having to worry about restoring a larger portion of your environment. So having these services that can quickly detect and centralize your ability to analyze your logs and what's going on in your environment quickly is critical to that, what we call kind of the DevSecOps mentality, where you really are able to get your operational teams and your security teams quickly, an event-driven way to identify anything that's going on in your environment.
And another thing, that recover section there, right? And I talked about the importance of recovery speed, and that resiliency, and the migration. And that's something I'll see if we can demo a little bit later, right? On how the NetBackup resiliency works, how it leverages S3 and object storage and our dedupe engine and our EC2 instances to help you build that resiliency and recoverability. And so we'll see a little demo on that later. You think about some of the benefits of resiliency with Veritas is, first of all, it's reliability, right? We have a lot of experience in doing this. We can come in here and, like I talked about, is we can deliver the secure subsystem here with the fewer point solutions. This idea of having strong security and then, role-based, things like, zero trust architecture, role-based architecture, or, the access is that idea that, okay, so if I'm a backup admin, I might see all these things, right? But maybe I want to give access to a particular workload admin to manage that recovery, or API access to do those things, or whatever, right? So I can do that granularly. I can be like the MS SQL admin can come in and do his backups and do instant recovery of those. But that's all he sees is just the stuff that he wants, right? And he can't go see what the Kubernetes admin might be worried about, right? Or the VMware admin. And this helps out that resiliency. The idea of detection, right? That operational efficiency, and that big thing is that bringing in that whole infrastructure awareness, that total visibility of like what's going on with your backups. If you got other providers, we can report on what's going on with other providers. We can even look at what's going on in your infrastructure, right? Look for things like, is there anomalous behavior in your infrastructure? Are there weird behavior? Those sort of things, right? We have all those capabilities to detect that sort of stuff and feed it up to you so that you can come in and be like, oh, looks like there's something right? Something wrong. So if there's something wrong, right, hopefully there isn't, right? Hopefully all your first line defense systems work, right, and nothing ever goes wrong, because we know that's how it always works, right? But if it doesn't, so you got this idea that if something does go wrong, you want to find out sooner rather than later, right? So that is that visibility, that detection, that being able to pick up on things that look weird before they break something, right? And so it's a lot of looking for like the presence of the impact of ransomware is a big thing to try and get on, right? So, a lot of times you're trying to detect ransomware, but you look at the biggest thing is like it might be 0 day, you don't know what it is, but hey, look, all the stuff over here is getting encrypted. That's weird, right? Or there's a weird access going on, right? Some account seems to be going into places it's not supposed to or doesn't normally go into. Detecting those sort of things, right? And again, like I said, is the rapid recovery, being able to come up here and reduce risk, orchestrate things, and then have that resiliency to alternate sites is really important. And I'm going to demo that a little bit later. But up next, I'm going to actually have Rick Bryant is going to come up here. And he's going to talk a little bit about some customer stories and customers' experiences around this stuff.
Can y'all hear me? Well, guys, I apologize. First and foremost, I was supposed to be up here with Deb Murrow, who's the CIO of El Camino Health, one of my big customers, who we've helped tackle this problem with, right? And I'm the healthcare CTO, so I've been in the industry about 28 years, but why am I up here talking to y'all? Because I saw a correlation. I've been warning the industries since about the early 2000s, a correlation of high data value and a low investment in security. That made my industry, healthcare, which has definitely been under a lot of duress, a focal point of this attack, right? Who doesn't want to get the next cure for COVID or that new pill that they have coming out or remdesivir? And because of that, I've been warning the industry, and I've talked to groups like the new cybersecurity group, the FBI, even the Navy SPA War group, because I just saw this coming. And with that, I've been able to torment my product management team to incorporate these features from day one, right? It's important to note that the appliance that John was talking about was built with a zero trust architecture. Guess who just came out with an executive order about 3 weeks requiring that all federal governments and agencies, one, share data, which kind of terrified me that they weren't doing that after 9/11 in the first place, right? But two, to have a zero trust infrastructure. Those roles that he's talking about are critical to any type of layered defense. You don't want to have your backup administrators that can stop and restart jobs be able to delete jobs. So having that separate. But that appliance, I'm happy to report, and I get nervous. Is there wood up here? Our appliance customers, those who trust us to put their backups on our appliances, have been 100% recoverable. None of our competition can say that. I can tell you about a number of case stories that I had. There's a little hospital in California you may have heard of that had a ransomware attack. Well, guess what? They had Commvault. They had an immutable copy stored on a data domain. But you know what? All immutability is not the same. If you take nothing else away from this conversation, you need to know that we are the only solution in the marketplace today that the immutable timer cannot be altered. With that hospital I was talking about, the hackers went in there, they changed the time and date and the NTP source on the data domains and deleted the backups. That's why they were down for over a month. The other thing that's big about this is that, even though ransomware has come about over the years, it first started out as kind of like, I picture a bunch of people that have too much time on their hands, they just want to cause chaos. Now it's a business. The latest Aon report, which for those of y'all that may not know, and you probably should have this conversation with your IT executives because this is a board level issue, is that ransomware is up 311% since fourth quarter of 2019. Why? Because it's big business. It hit me that it was big business when I was working with the cybersecurity group, and we have sanctions against North Korea and trying to stop them from creating a missile and bombing Japan and everybody else. Even all those sanctions didn't stop that missile program because they were able to generate $1.5 billion through ransomware campaigns. That's when I realized this is a national security issue, right? Not just to our infrastructure, but to other infrastructures. And so that increase in attacks has caused your cybersecurity insurance companies to double, even 6 times the premium it takes. Who of y'all have cybersecurity insurance in here? Everybody's got some. Even Veritas has $10 million, right? But if I was paying $100,000 last year, or probably 2 years ago, because they've been coming up, insurance companies are always good about increasing your rates, not really good about paying out or decreasing the rates. But if it was costing you $100,000 for a $10 million policy last year, it could be $200,000 to $600,000 this year. That's real money that when you talk to your organizations about, they can give you to invest into your infrastructure to make you cyber resilient. We can talk about ransomware, and ransomware has changed, right? The biggest things John talked about the first time, keep me straight on time. I can rant on this and you can tell I got a little passion for it. It's a little cloak and dagger stuff. But when they started specifically doing pane of glass attacks to encrypt or delete your backup data, that's where we really started to shine because our appliances would protect from any zero-day vulnerability. It was built like that from the start. We didn't have to fix that for ransomware. It was built like that. What they did do is they added this immutability on top of it, and with an internal immutability timer that cannot be tampered. The enterprise mode, the compliance mode that John talked about, it can't change. The root can't change that. We also have, is it the compliance mode with the two-factor, two-key, or is that enterprise mode?
We have enterprise mode, right? So enterprise mode is essentially similar, like Henry was talking about this, right? Enterprise mode means that there is some ability to go in there and basically fix it if you mess up, right? So somebody accidentally set stuff to retain for 30 years, you're like, oops, we didn't want to do that. There is a way to fix that, and that is the enterprise mode. And that allows you to go in and change that, but it's not simple. It's basically a four-eyes operation, essentially, is that you need 2 different people, right? 2 different sets of credentials. Someone has to log into the storage layer and basically authorize the change on that image, and then there's a timer and there's a finite amount of time where the second person has to go in and actually make their change. Compliance mode is where it's in compliance mode. So if you say somebody has to be retained for 5 years, it's going to be there for 5 years, and there's no way to get rid of it, right?
So I like to use the analogy. Who here's seen the movie War Games? Am I dating myself? All right, good, so I'm not alone. You remember that first scene when they have the 2 Air Force officers and they each have to put their key in at the same time and they have to turn at the same time and ultimately they wouldn't do it? That's the type of protections you have to be able to protect those immutable copies in that enterprise mode. So if you change your retention period, you can recover that, but it takes 4 factors, as he mentioned. Mm-hmm. So the last couple of things I wanted to bring up around the customer success stories is we had a hospital that was suffering wildfires in what was that, 2-3 years ago now? I think you guys know which one that is. Very big customer of ours. They use 7 different types of resiliency technologies, and after the wildfires, they had 2 hospitals cut off and permanently lost patient data, which is a huge no-no. They came back to us and they said, Veritas, out of the 7 different high availability and resiliency products you have, yours worked. Everyone else we kind of had to flumber with, but we were able to recover the data that you were protecting. So that was a big piece of it. And then with ransomware, what I've been encouraging everybody is to start looking at this not just in terms of ransomware protection, but cyber resiliency, because it's gonna change again. Just like it changed to target your backup workloads, and then it changed to start exfiltrating your data. They have platforms out there for ransomware as a service where even me, not as technical person in the world, I can go out there and give you my Bitcoin wallet, I can give you the IP address or the target that I want you to get, and I'll give you the ransom note, and the platform will attack for me. and they get 10% or 15% off of the top. That's how easy it is for this stuff to happen. 49% of hospitals have been attacked by this. So you have to plan not just for this current emergency, but make sure that you're resilient. And with the resiliency, what I always like to tell people is that, you know, as a CIO, nobody cares about backup. It's like paying for insurance. It kind of stinks, but you have to do it. But everybody cares about recovery, right? When my business is down or my job's on the line or have patients that are at risk because my medical systems aren't up, I care about how quickly you can get that done. What we've done is we've been able to incorporate the Veritas Resiliency Platform with the entitlement for the backup, which gives you that ability to do that orchestration, to press a button and prove that you're resilient on a regular basis. So I've been doing that with a lot of customers now. And when it comes to Henry and the stuff that we've been doing there, it's nothing short of amazing. I mean, I am not a cloud guy. I'm an old infrastructure guy. He has to help me out. But we've got that technology to the point to where literally you can press a button and fail to the cloud and operate it during the time. I always use the hurricane emergency. Well, you're out of Arizona now. Jan Jarkey's out of Texas, because we always have hurricanes, right? You have a hurricane coming. You have a winter storm coming. There's a wildfire approaching. You can press a button, if it's been set up in advance, fail into Amazon, operate out of that cloud until it's gone, and press another button to bring it back on premise, but also tear down all that residual costs. I mean, that's pretty sophisticated. That's probably the highest end of resiliency that I've seen. And there's multiple levels. But by doing that, when you used to spend $1 on a production site and then $1 on a DR site that primarily sits empty, and also configuration changes often, because production's always changing. Are we always going back and making sure DR works? Not necessarily. But that fire drill will tell you that it'll work, be able to prove that it'll work, and you'll be able to demonstrate to your organization, hey, look, I can give you confidence that we're resilient against ransomware. I can give you confidence, and I can prove to you that we can recover at this RTO or RPO, to use the technical terms. And they really like that. And they're going to give you guys, if you go and have these conversations about the rising increase of cybersecurity insurance, the exfiltration and extortion of the data, and the risk that puts to your organization, they're going to give you more investment to make your environments better. I promise you they will. And one of the best ways that I've done that, and it's a little sneaky, I apologize, but I go and say, all right, who here, this is a pretty high-tech group, right? Who here has done cryptocurrency at all? Anybody? I even got into it because I have a lot of really smart friends that are high-tech, and I wasn't going to be the only guy not having a Ferrari. That just wasn't going to happen. It took me 2 damn weeks to set up the Bitcoin wallet. This isn't like a bank. You can't just go there Monday 8 to 4 and get it set up. You don't even have a telephone number to call. It's all online and via email. So go to your boards, go to your leaders and say, are we willing to pay the ransom? And that's going to open up a whole big bee's nest, right? And unless they say we are absolutely positive that we're not going to pay the ransom, and here, I'm going to give you the money you need to be resilient, then advise them to set up a Bitcoin wallet now. You can always add money to it later, but you're not going to have your business down for 2 weeks. So this is just an example, right? And aside from the great technologies and solutions we put together with these guys, for me, especially in my practice, I like to take a consultative approach and advise on all the layers, even the stuff that we don't sell. You know, there's perimeter security and web security. There's an interaction between the CISO and the security teams and the infrastructure teams like I've never seen before. And there's also a lot of process, right? People and process. Technology does what it's programmed to do. People are different every darn day. So setting up all those things to make sure that you're resilient will put you in a great position to be able to protect your environment.
Yeah, and those are, you know, really important things. And, you know, some of the things you talked about, right? You talked about the cloud copies, you know, the resiliency, backup resiliency, all this sort of stuff. You know, important thing to ask, right? So you got net backup, right? Mm-hmm. And you want to do the resiliency stuff. How much extra you got to pay for it?
It's entitled.
It's entitled. It's free, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, you want to make, you know, I want to make a copy on-prem and a copy in cloud. How much do I have to pay extra to make a copy in the cloud? None, right? So there's a lot of things we've done to try and build this stuff into the solution, not just from a technology perspective, but from a cost perspective, where you're not trying to pay for every little thing that you want to get, right? You're just, if you get the product, you're entitled to all these things, and it's just if you want to set them up and use them, right? So let me go on, because I want to leave some time for questions at the end. And I'm going to try and do a demo of a few things here.
All right.
So this is where I need to be Mr. AV and not screw this part up. So if I push this button, and then that, we should see some stuff over here. So one of the things we talked about was a little bit of, was our usage of cloud storage, right? So if I go from on-prem or from cloud to cloud or from between regions, I want to have this resiliency where, like, if I've got one instance here that's running in one region, and it's written this data into S3 or from on-prem to S3 or wherever, right? And it's written data. So it's deduped it, it's stored it, it's put it in object storage, right? It's really cool. That's great, right? But what if I want to leverage that data in the cloud, right? So we have something called image sharing. Image sharing allows us to basically take any data that's written to the bucket. The buckets are completely self-descriptive, and you can actually write from a CFT, even right from the marketplace, connect an instance right to that thing and be able to see that data from that instance, right? And that is foundational to some of the resiliency stuff. So one of the things in this little demo here that it does is essentially is showing you what you can go through here is you have these different storage servers, right? And I've written with these into the cloud, and these go into these disk pools. So this is, if you haven't seen like the NetBackup Web UI in a time, this is what it looks like now. So this is something you can do today, right? So if I have these storage pools I've gone into, these are, I can do infrequent access, you can do whatever you want to do, right? They go into these, and then I've got these disk pools. So if you look at this one, right, this one is writing into the cloud, and it's running some backups. And if for the sake of time, if I can skip forward a little bit, we can go into basically, if I go into here and I have my storage here, this is the new instance, for example, that I've deployed to the cloud, right? So I ran a CFT, instance shows up, I log in and I go into it, right? So if I go in here, the next thing I do in here is go over and go find this pool that I set up, and you see it says MSDB for image sharing, right? So this is the secondary system. This is the system that comes up and it's running. So the secondary system's up there and it's running, and what it's doing is this is on demand, right? This can be technical difficulties. This can be set up at any point, right? So this is like your storage is up there. It can be petabytes of data, right? It's all up there, and you want to start using it, right? All you need to do is go in there and deploy that CFT, deploy that instance, and it will auto-connect to that bucket. And then essentially the actions are is you run a fast import. So basically it does a fast import of all the data into this system, and you will have basically fully recoverable images, right? So on top of that, what can I do with these, right? Is these images, as I take them in and I do the fast import on them, this runs really fast, and essentially what it's doing is it's going into those buckets of data, that deduplicated object data, and it has all the data it needs to know about all the metadata to do recovery of this stuff. So you see it pulls in all these, like, these are a bunch of VMware backups, right? So I can pull in a bunch of VMware backups into the system and see them and make them visible. What it does next then is it actually will take those VMs and it can convert them to AMIs and convert them into EC2 instances, right? So it does that conversion, right? So it's this idea that I can come in here, I can have data sitting there, my whole building could have burned down, right? Hurricane, whatever, right? All that sort of stuff. But if I have a bucket in AWS with a backup data, in a matter of minutes, I can be recovering that data in the cloud, right? This is kind of like the manual experience, right? This is just like basic net backup stuff. So if you do this, they go through and import these. You run the import, and you do things. Hold on. Automatic helper pop-ups. Do pop-ups. So this import runs, and it basically comes in here and runs this image import. So the image imports come in there, and for sake of time, I'll speed it up a little bit, comes in here and it runs this process. So essentially what it does is you run this import, you get an imported backup, right? So now you come in here and you can basically see these imported backups, and I can go into the virtual machines and I can browse and find these copies, right? So then what do I do? If I want to take these copies in here, and essentially I want to take this VM and I want to start running it in the cloud, right? I essentially just go in here to the next phase, which will allow me to essentially browse down here, and I find a recovery point. And in this recovery point, essentially will show an option. So I can do a restore, right? I can do things like instant access. I can do all this. So there's all sorts of things we can do with VMs. But one of them we can do is we can come back here and say, there's this option we have to do a conversion. So we go into the conversion step. That conversion step is going to allow me to essentially come in here and do that recovery, right? So I do that conversion, I get an instance ID, we can power that on, and we can run with that, right? So this is kind of the basics of the APIs, right? So this is the web UI interfacing with this stuff. This is how all the API works. And this essentially gives you that recovery point. It does a VMware conversion, brings it online, and you basically have a working system, right? So this is, like I said, this is the basics, right? This is the idea that I can go in there and I can say, okay, so I'm running, I got a VM, or a bunch of VMs. I can pick them, I can say, bring them online as AMIs, all right, and turn them into EC2 instances, that sort of stuff. But what if I want to do that as part of like a larger business infrastructure, right? So I got a business unit I want to do that as a part of. That's where we come to this idea that if I look at what we're doing here, this is where the resiliency platform ideas come in here, right? So resiliency platform hooks into all of those APIs and all that complexity. You kind of just saw there, it's a few things. That's a lot of click, do this, that sort of thing, right? All that gets automatically managed by the resiliency platform. So the resiliency platform basically does all this sort of stuff. I think this video shows how you set it up, and you know, it's basically filling out some drop downs and stuff like that. And so I kind of skipped all of that for sake of time to essentially show you that now if you understand that background concepts of I have data that is on-prem or in one cloud, I backed up to another cloud, it's in object storage, and I want to bring that stuff online, right? Once I've set up the resiliency platform, all I need to do is come in and push a button. So this is like your finance department or whatever, right? This isn't just a system or a disk that you're worrying about or a database, right? This is the business unit, right? So I come in here and I can basically say, I want to run this sort of thing, right? So if I run through this stuff, is essentially what this sort of thing is. You can see what this will do is it's going to come in and it validates the configuration. It's going to validate all the infrastructure it's needed to bring the systems online. It will take these, like, what I saw right there, right, is the idea that I come in here and I can take this bucket that I've written to that's got a bunch of VMware backups, for example. How do I get these working, right? This is where it automatically does all that for you, right? It comes in, it says, okay, I got some VMware backups. I'm going to make them run as AMI or as EC2 instances. And not only that, but I have to have, like, this one needs to be running before this one is, right? And this service, so it sets up your VPC, it sets up your networking, it takes care of all that stuff. Who's had to deal with that, right? Wouldn't it be great if it was automated when it's an emergency and everyone's panicking? That's what this does, right?
Well, there's one good point. Oftentimes in key emergencies, you may not have access to all your people, right? Do you want one VM admin or one storage admin to keep your business down because they got flooded out or they're unavailable? Mm-hmm. That's why it's good to do this stuff in advance.
Yep.
And this is actually the same technology that Henry and the team created that allowed us to fail over an entire Epic EMR on-prem to the AWS cloud, operate out of that cloud, and then fail it back. It's a really powerful tool. But it does take some time in advance. You have to think through all those steps. Mm-hmm. But once it's set up.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's always, I mean, obviously in DR, right, there's always complexity. What you don't want to deal is have to deal with all that complexity when you're in the middle of a fire drill, right? So if you can manage the complexity, if you could take all those things that we all know you have to worry about, right? No one's sitting here saying it's just magic, right? I mean, except for like CTOs or CIOs say that, right? They're like, it'll just go to the cloud, it'll be fine. But there's a lot of complexity, there's a lot of things to worry about. And this is the biggest value here is just the idea that you can come in here and be like, okay, I figured it all out ahead of time. I made a run book, I know what I want to do, right? So if I have a panic and I need to do something, right, I push the button, right? Okay, regulators show up, right? Who here has always heard the story of we had a great DR plan until somebody told us to test it, right? And then we found it didn't work, right? Or oops, yeah. This is a great one. Regulators come in, right? And you sit here and you say, you know, you can go in here and say, go to that. It's actually kind of one of the more boring things to demo because really what you're doing is you're like, go to the department, right? Click on the unit, say, do dry run, right? And it does a dry run, right? And it's kind of cool because it'll leave the production system running, but then it'll just have a copy of the production system running in the cloud. And you can do this across multiple infrastructures, multiple resiliency layers as well too. So like we're talking about using the backup infrastructure, right? The backups as recovery, but it also can do active replication. So anything from direct replication and managing that way, you can have multiple SLOs you define in these runbooks too. Like so for, you know, some of these things in this group, I want them to use a replicated volume for their recovery point, and some of these ones I want to use a backup copy for the recovery point. It has all that you can define and essentially just let it run. And that gives you essentially that idea that I can run through this stuff, I can get to these points in time that I bring this stuff up, and you can see like, for example, here is these are like systems that automatically brought these VMs, converted them, brought them up in AWS, running with the busy, you know, with the infrastructure they need. All that sort of stuff is going to get done and give you that resiliency. So I think with that, what I'm going to do is switch back here really quick. If I push the right buttons. And just get to, you know, I'm going to leave about 10 minutes here for any questions, right? So who's got questions? This guy's got questions.
kind of. Do I need to repeat? So what I was saying basically is, how do we start a conversation with you guys to have someone who's more knowledgeable with obviously your products to talk to us directly about our specific situation?
You want to take that?
Yeah, sure. We can put you in touch with the account manager and have that kind of conversation with you. I would say in terms of steps, the first thing you want to do is to make sure that you're protecting all the data, right? Might want to set up that Bitcoin wallet, start some of the conversations with your leadership, and let them know that, you know, there is some risk there, and start sharing that risk, because it's too much to put on any one person's burden.
We've started a cybersecurity awareness type of communications and training. So we're working towards, you know, protecting ourselves with phishing attacks, things like that. But obviously that's not 100%. So
You know what the latest attack is? And this is, again, so damn devious. These bad guys are smart. What they're doing, and they did this to a couple of hospital systems throughout the country during the worst part of the pandemic. They would, because they were all starting to work from home, right? They're face-to-face people, working from home for the first time, hadn't had any phishing training. What they do is they get in, they do a targeted spear phishing attack against an individual, make it look like your Amazon order has been processed. Once they get into that, they pop up an ad that says, you are busted. You have violated your security policies. Pay us $50 or we're going to inform your company, your security department. You could lose your job. But what really that is a stall tactic. While they're trying to figure out how to pay $50 to not lose their job, the bad guys are tunneling in through the back to get to the real data that's of value. So you got to look at it, people, process, and technology, but we're out here to help you. Just make sure that you've got all your data and that data is protected and that it's locked down, whether it's on your own systems with IDS, whether it's on our appliances. One thing I didn't mention about Amazon is that one of the biggest values they have is not every organization is big enough to have an alternate DR center, right? Well, guess what? You have the perfect air gap right here, and guess what? That immutability timer can't be tampered there. So that can be your air gap copy. So we have a lot of resources that can help you.
okay, so where do you suggest we start trying to
Give
communicate?
me your name, and I'll put you in touch with your account manager.
Okay.
Sure.
Yeah, and from a product perspective, there's a lot to be said for some of our insights analytics tools, like AppTower, has like, you know, a ransomware dashboard where it can look at your infrastructure, right? Start making recommendations about things you could worry about, right? Like I said before too, is like for your on-prem storage, buy an appliance, right? It's your cheapest, it's the easiest way to the most secure option. You don't really have to think about it. You buy, deploy it, and it'll be fine, right? But there's a lot of best practices that I see, right? So like, honestly, if you can avoid, you know, using Windows for some of your critical systems, right? That's one of the reasons we don't have Windows in our appliances, right? It's just nothing against Microsoft. It's just the most common vector, right? So it's the thing that most people are going to target. And it's, in a lot of ways, it's a little harder to secure. So those are important things to worry about from that aspect. But like we said, we got experts that can help with all that sort of stuff. They're there to answer those questions.
And you can look at we have a lot of resources on the website to kind of give you some ideas while we're getting you in touch with the right people. I created an incident response plan, but the federal government just released one, so we'll get that stuff to you as well to let you know what to do, because it's a combination of teams, you know. Are you responsible for the storage or the processing or on the development side? So you're going to have to bring your infrastructure folks, your security folks to the table. One of the most critical aspects is actually the networking folks. When we talk about containment, being able to use sniffers to find out where the traffic's going, or you get an alert from one of our systems that's saying, hey, CPU spiking over here. It's usually 5%, but now it's 80. That's probably encryption activity or our storage I/O. But to be able to take active containment measures to shut down those segments so that it doesn't spread. So it's a team that does it, and we'll help walk you through all that.
And I have virus scanning, I'm fully protected. I no longer need to, you know, worry about anything inside, right? And now you got all these kind of, as was mentioned, more sophisticated types of ransomware that's coming out. You got things happening from the inside. You can't just think, okay, I'm going to protect the outer perimeter, and then I'm going to assume nothing's going to get past that, right? And so I don't need to protect further. You got to think about all aspects of it. So if you have that, you want to definitely protect the perimeter. You want to definitely have all the security best practices, have your people trained, not click on site, on email links they shouldn't, and things of that nature. But you also want to make sure if anything should happen, that you have that data protected and have the ability to actually bring it back. As was mentioned, I always say to all my customers when I help them with disaster recovery and test is like a disaster recovery plan that isn't tested is no plan at all, right? You got to test to make sure that you actually can recover.
And to Henry's point, even though we've seen this evolve to destroy the backup copies, we've seen it evolve to exfiltrate. Guys, this is nothing. Do you remember a few years ago when the NSA got hacked and the Silverlight package got out? That allows them to take over the smartphones and the cameras and the TVs and the microphones. It's only going to get more sophisticated.
So any other questions? We got a couple of minutes left. Anyone? Everyone nice and secure from ransomware and have no concerns now? No? Oh,
I think we got questions
one over there?
here.
Yeah, I do have a question. When you were talking about the S3 object lock and immutability, I think you said that you cannot change it even with an admin account after you set it up. But then later you said that Veritas is the only solution with real immutable lock. So I just wanted some clarification about the difference between what you're doing on your side and on the Veritas side and what you can do in S3.
Well, I think what you're talking about, and it applies both to our immutable storage in our appliances and the cloud, is that idea of when can you change it, right? And there are different modes, and that's where we get to that idea that if you do have this kind of enterprise mode, or I think in AWS you guys would call it governance mode, right?
Yeah, we call it governance
and
mode.
so governance mode, and but it's the same concept, same implementation basically. It's the idea that does allow you to go in and release an object for modification. The idea of the setup there is that you have a security admin, something like that. That's the person that has that credential, right? So the storage admin, backup admin can't do anything unless the security admin comes in and clears them for that operation. Then there's a timer and they can do it, and they can clean it up. And if you don't if you don't want to have that risk, that's where the compliance mode comes in. And compliance mode is hard and fast. So if you say this is retained for 5 years, it'll be retained for 5 years, and there's no way to override that.
And the important part is that all other immutability solutions out there on the market rely on the NTP source or the system source for that source of truth. With our solution, we have a separate source of truth that cannot be tampered with. Mm-hmm. So even if they change the system date like they did at that hospital's attack, they still couldn't delete it because we keep a separate timer.
Yeah, it's a compliance clock structure that has I like to say it has its own concept of time and it doesn't care what you think.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
it's
so
brilliant.
it's really about where that data is stored, and that's where it comes in. Yeah, so the object lock only applies to things that are stored in S3, whereas what Veritas is doing applies regardless of where you're storing that data.
Thank you. Thanks, Henry.
okay, with that, we got
I think
one
we
more
got
quick question,
yeah.
and then we got to wrap up.
I've been mostly focusing on on-prem servers that are being, you're covering them into the cloud for your DR solution. What about environments that are already on AWS?
Yeah, and that's like
What do I
everything
do
you
with
can
my
do on.
RDSs, my DynamoDBs, my Elasticsearches, all my other data sources which are not servers.
Yeah, so you start looking at that as if you look at the PaaS workloads and whatnot, right? That's the idea of I take a workload and I want to have protection of that, like something in RDS, right? There's different levels of protection for that. There's like just doing snapshots, right? You can do that sort of thing. But one of the things that are big is like how can I take that data? And remember, I talked about we talked about our appliances a lot, but everything we have is software defined. So all that stuff we can run as a cloud-based service as well, right? And so you can take a small instance and put it in the cloud and protect those workloads. And the idea that I could take a workload, if I could take a workload, I could back it up, I could put an MSDP writing to S3 object lock, right? That's going to give you that immutable protection of the data in that workload. And so we don't do every PaaS workload now, but we're expanding on those. But it's the whole idea of that if you have a data lake or you have a bunch of data that maybe you got a bunch of apps that run as functions in there and you're storing all your data in S3, right? How do you protect that? You back up S3, right? You can put immutable targets in different tiers and that sort of stuff. That's really how we're focusing on that.
We've got one customer that we're working with, which is really leading edge, and they designed multiple, I'm not going to use the right term, availability zones. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
All right.
Yeah.
Multiple availability zones for their EMR and the other 149 applications that have to be surrounding it, but also an off region. So all the concepts that we've talked about can apply to your cloud or even multi-cloud strategy. But of course, we want to keep everything on it.
It's all basically just software, right? So we try to span it across those different constructs.
Yeah,
But it's a good
I think the key point is all the net backup components run on AWS. You don't require anything to be on premises. You can have it running on premises and going to AWS, or you can have, if you have 100% just AWS, you can have that as well. As was mentioned, Veritas doesn't yet support every single service that you might be using, so it depends on what services you need to protect, where your data might be, and that obviously changes over time. I'm sure the Veritas team would love to hear any service that you're interested in that they might not support, to add support for that service.
So I
But
can run the appliance on AWS, and I can give it tasks to back up my RDSs, my DynamoDBs, et cetera.
that's
Virtual
right.
appliance.
That's right.
Yep.
Yes.
And we could talk, we got to wrap up because we're getting a little over time, but I'll be happy to talk to you over on the side about that too.
Yeah, we can take that offline.
All right, guys.
So
well,
I want
thank
to have
you so
courtesy for the
much.
people after us, so we're going to wrap up. But thank you everyone for coming. It's been great talking to you. And have a great reInvent.